Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Montessori show of, what are we, March 10th, 2022. My goodness, I look back and we've been at this since October 2015, so pretty sweet. And this is the first show of 2022, so welcome, everybody. I am Jeanne-Marie Pinel. We are recording this live. I am in San Diego, California, with my wonderful co-host, Simone. Hey, Simone.
Hey, everyone. I'm Simone, and my pronouns are she, her. I can make a quick land acknowledgement as well, if that's okay, Jeanne-Marie.
Of course.
If anyone knows the land that they're calling in from, please add it in the chat as well. I live here in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and whilst there are not, native peoples living here, I do suffer from having a colonial past because the Netherlands were very big colonizers in many countries. So I have benefited from the wealth that, sometimes I walk along the canals here in Amsterdam and look at these riches that they accrued during that time. And we really need to pay reparations and acknowledge the people who came here as enslaved folk. I also grew up on the lands of the Camaragal people and acknowledge the beauty of the land and the traditional landowners, past, present, and future. So you can always look it up on the Native Lands website. Tamara, you're calling in from Australia. You definitely can have a look for the Indigenous land that you're living on as well. So thank you everyone for joining us, as Jeanne-Marie says, for the first call of 2022. And we collected lots of questions before the call, and you're also welcome to ask your questions live in the chat. I'm going to be the one who is hosting, holding and putting your questions to Jeanne-Marie, and of course I'll chip in as well. I've been suffering from COVID this week, so I might not be at my 100%, I can see, I just can't make full sentences, but we will just see how this goes. I'm definitely symptom free now and back to class tomorrow, so excited about that as well. All that to say is that we had questions coming in on my Instagram stories, and sadly Instagram has changed their settings and I can't view any of those ones, but I got lots on my post as well, and your folks if anything comes up for you, feel free to drop it in the chat. But Jeanne-Marie, I also wanted to mention before we get started is our friends are doing a beautiful bundle at the moment to raise money for Ukrainian refugees. So I can drop that into the chat as soon as possible if anyone would be interested. It's more than 100 educational printables, and Jeanne-Marie and I have both contributed, a PDF to that. So if you would like to consider, that would be great. I also just listened to a conversation put on by Rie and Montessori, and it's with 3 Montessori trainers at each level, 0, 3, 3 to 6, and 6 to 12, who are talking about how to talk to children about what's going on in the world right now. So that's a really interesting conversation, and I'll drop the link to that in the chat, as well as put it in the recording with the recording that we send out. I'll send the link to that.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. That is amazing. Yes. And that bundle has already generated quite a lot of fun. So it's been wonderful to see the collaboration of all Montessorians around the world for this. Wonderful. And yes, thank you for reminding me about the land acknowledgement, because I live on the land of the Kumeyaay Indians, who have been here for generations and generations. And so I want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
And we've got Naomi calling in from Raleigh in North Carolina, and Tamara from Australia, and other folks on the call. What is also really nice on these calls is to see your faces. So if you would like to, you can turn on your cameras if your situation allows, because we really feel like we are in community with you and we can see your faces as well. All right, anything else before we get started with our first question?
No, let's go. Let's dive right in. And like we said, if you have a question, you are on the call, just please. Oh, Bree has put on her camera. That might mean she has a question. So just unmute yourself and go ahead. Ask us your question. It's always really nice for us to know the age of your child. First, just because developmentally we need to know where they're situated. and then just ask us your question and we'll ask if we need more background information. So thank you. Go ahead, Bree.
Hi, my name's Bree. So I'm actually an elementary early childhood educator. I'm not a parent yet, but I have been reading a lot of Montessori principles, and one of my main questions is I'm considering becoming Montessori certified. And I feel like the process is a little convoluted. Like when you look it up online, it's very confusing as to like which certifications are the most appropriate and transferable. There's so many different schools. They tell you so many different options. And I was wondering like what advice you would have for that process.
So I think our advice might be, it's personal. It's really what we have experienced. Both Simone and I are AMI trained, that is Association Montessori International, which is the association that Rie Montessori and her son Mario founded. So to me, that is kind of the one to go for, because it's from the source. But there are so many different accreditations now. What I would strongly suggest, and this is something that I did when I decided, when I wanted to change, I started calling schools of different areas where I might want to live and teach, and just ask them, what are the certification that you prefer in hiring, right? So for me, I live where there is an AMI center. So I called and said, do you recognize AMI? Is that? And everybody's answer was, oh, yes, AMI, yes, that wonderful. So it kind of gave me the green light that this was the one to do. And for me, it's just doing a little bit of research. So today, with what we've been, going through these past 2 years, where so much has been put online, there are many now kind of, trainings that are online or that are hybrids. But one thing I will say is, if you can do an in-person training, to me, that is the best, because having your hands on the material, being able to observe in real classrooms and such, being able to hear what the children are saying is very important. So try as much as possible, to be in a place where you can be in person. And then there are different, so depending on the level that you're wanting, I'm assuming you're wanting to do elementary, but yeah. So there are, different kind of, there's either full academic years, or there are now kind of summer sessions. So for example, I did my 3 to 6, what we call primary, as an academic year. So it was from September to May, and then did a summer program to get my master's. But then for the 0 to 3, those were 2 summers. So I was able to work during the academic year, and went, I think I want to say it was 5 or 6 weeks for 2 summers in a row. And you did have, observation work to do in between during that year, but that is also an option. So that is kind of my feedback. Simone, anything to add to that?
I'd also say, I'm not sure if it's the same in every state in the US, but definitely in the Netherlands, you also need a teaching certificate to go along with your Montessori certification. So that's something you need to check the regulations in your area. I definitely agree with Jeanne-Marie to ask around like what's accepted by the schools that you might like to work at, which qualifications they see and not. And I dropped a link in the chat as well to a blog post of people who I know have followed the training, but I haven't personally followed the training, but they have enjoyed it. So that will give you a little bit of a start as well. And I see you actually sent in your questions earlier, so I'll let you keep asking. I'll just have a quick wave to Deborah, who's also joining from London. But Bree, you had a couple of other questions as well. Would you like to ask them now?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, my other question is, I've been fascinated in learning about the Montessori method myself, and my friend just recently introduced me to Rie parenting, and it seems like there's a lot of similarities, but also some differences. So I wasn't sure, like, your take on, like, if a parent was wanting to do both, like at home, like how they fit together and how they might run into like problems, like what that looks like.
So I am not Rie trained. Simone's co-author of the Montessori Baby is Junifa, and we actually did a show with Junifa many years ago where she had just finished her Rie training. So you are very correct in saying that there are very, similarities, because it's very much about observation. It's very much about natural development, movement, and such. The little bit that I know and that I see is this idea, first of all, of to really create kind of an enclosed space for them to have that, what we call the yes space. Montessori tends to just make the entire home safe for exploration and be that yes space. So that's kind of the minute little difference. And then, for example, there is, and this is really from, just exchange on blogs and things, but in Montessori, in our movement area, we like to install a mirror for the child to kind of be engaged, and we know that it kind of motivates them for movement. We know that they're not recognizing themselves, but it's just kind of an aid to movement. Rie tends to say no mirror whatsoever, that it's I don't know, it's somewhat disrespectful. I haven't quite understood the reasoning behind it, but so they're very minor little things. What I would say to parents is take what works for you from both. I think both of them definitely, meet at a very respectful way of letting our children be who they are meant to be and develop naturally and such. So they're both respectful, and they go very well hand in hand. Simone, you know more about Rie now that you've written this lovely book with Junifa. What do you have to say?
Well, I think there's so much crossover, because actually I took a couple of things away from Rie as well to consolidate what we already know in our training, but it kind of articulates it quite well. And one, I popped a link in the chat where we had interviewed Junifa, so you can follow that link. It's really beautiful, and she talked about gentle hands, and it's something that I've always known we do, but they really say use your gentle hands to handle your baby, ask for permission before you pick them up. And that wasn't just specified as much in our Montessori training. And so I really have molded it into the way that I Montessori with babies. So I really appreciate the gentle hands, the asking permission before you handle the baby, and not putting a baby into the position that they can't get into themselves. So we kind of always thought that in Montessori, but it was never again articulated. And you can just see, like, when you prop a baby to sit, which was in our Montessori training, to put them in a sit position, they can't get into that position or out of it themselves. And so I think it's actually is more respectful and in a more line with Montessori to be lying them down, whether it's on your front or back. I know they're quite particular on laying on their back, but I think so there's just some subtle differences. And again, as Jeanne-Marie says, take the bits that work for you, but they're definitely very much in line with each other. So
yeah.
I hope that.
Yeah. And parenting is, we have to remember that these are all beautiful ideas and philosophies and methods, but it will always, your intuition will always be the one that leads you also to care for your child. So like I said, take what feels right and what resonates, but they both go well hand in hand.
You also had a question about Montessori parents, although you're not a parent yourself. Did you want to ask that as well?
Sure. Yeah. My last question was just I know online there are some different people who post like classes specifically for parents, just to walk them through like how you could do Montessori at home and like what that could look like. And I feel like there's a lot of them. And so I wasn't sure if there was a good suggestion that you guys had of one, like parents who are interested in learning more, the place that you really direct them to, because I mean, I think there's a lot of parents who would be interested, but they're not sending their kids to a Montessori school, or they're not certified themselves. So like, what would be a good like starting point for them?
Well, I'm going to have to toot my own horn, and that would be the parenting school that I created just for that purpose, because for me, if you know a little bit background of my story, I discovered Montessori kind of later in life. I already had children, 8 and 4. And what I discovered going to school, doing my master's, was like so many ahas. And it was, oh my gosh, why don't all parents on the planet know about this, right? So that is kind of my aim in creating the parenting school. It's a 5-week course where I walk parents through what is Montessori, how to bring it into your home. And it's really for all parents, because I truly, truly believe that Montessori is a way of life, and it is how we welcome our children into our homes, how we help ease their adaptation to their time, place, and culture. And that can be done, you know, whether our children are in a Montessori school or in a Waldorf school or in a traditional schools. What we do at home matters. And so I bring those tools. And so in the parenting school, I talk about that, about how to set up our home environment. I also talk about positive discipline, that I think is a beautiful blend with Montessori, and just, you know, understanding our role as parents, as adults, not as servants or teachers, but really as guides, because we just happen to have been on planet Earth a little longer, and we can show them around. So yeah, it would be the parenting school would be my guess, but maybe Simone, you have other ideas, and Simone has some amazing courses on her website as well, workshops. Actually, we did one together about just the Montessori preschooler, and there's plenty of other things there. So Simone, do you have other suggestions?
I do. There's out of Rie and Montessori Institute in London, they actually have, so that's actually an AMI organization, and they have a Montessori at home kind of course. And so I think if you're trying to get a little bit of the theory and a little bit of the practical, it's a nice, you know, overview from the Montessori people, you know, to learn themselves. And that's, you know, targeted at parents. But it is expensive, right? So it's an investment as well. And I can look up the details and pop that in the chat and send that through to you as well. And then, yeah, I wrote the Montessori toddler because of that exact thing. Is I had lots of people asking me questions for my classes. So I just went, oh, what I'll do is I'll kind of like translate our Montessori training into what parents actually could use, and then wrote the book that's just very accessible for parents. So a lot of people have managed to enter Montessori that way. So I'm really happy that that's been helpful. And yeah, ad hoc courses, I have lots on my website, and I also run the Montessori retreat, which is like 8 weeks to live together, where we put like one theme per week into action, and that's been really fun as well. So there's, so like you say, there's too much choice, but if you like, there's kind of different levels. And I think what I would always look for is, who do I resonate most with? Like, do I like going back to the source? Because there's some really beautiful educators who really like read passages of Montessori and that kind of thing. Or there's someone who's very much like me, which is very practical, and like I probably refer to Dr. Montessori here and there, but I don't, you know, I'm not as theoretical based. Yeah. So I hope that gets everyone started. Lovely to see your face, Akshatha. I'm glad you made it. Apparently, Jeanne-Marie, like the reminder email didn't come through to folks. So
I know,
yeah.
and I saw her message and I'm looking, but I can't tell.
It's okay.
It's okay. We're here. That's what matters.
Exactly.
And I'll make sure everybody gets the replay.
Well,
So those were great questions, Bree. Thank you for your interest in Montessori and wanting to share that with parents. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
I don't want to miss some of the questions from Instagram. So what I'll do is I'll flip to Instagram post and then back to a live one here. Does that sound good, everyone? So
Sure.
If you maybe actually, if you have a question, raise your hand, then I can come to you in the screen as well. But okay, this one's from Instagram. It says, looking forward to joining the show. I want to ask you how I can combine Montessori program with normal kindergarten, as we couldn't get to a Montessori kindergarten. We need to start with a normal kindergarten option, and it's breaking my heart that I can't offer my toddler a full Montessori program.
So there would be, you know, get the Montessori toddler book, do some research. That, like I said, there is so much that we can do at home just with our day-to-day life of incorporating kind of Montessori principles. I tend to be vigilant as to not do too much extra kind of teaching in the Montessori method when our children are in a different teaching environment. I would rather do things that are going to support what they're doing at the school, because then that might be confusing, right? But it's true, for example, when it comes to language, to the awareness of the written symbols and such, definitely, when you're introducing those, do the sounds as opposed to the name. But again, be vigilant as how is it being taught in their classroom, right? Because I wouldn't want you to confuse them anymore. So just being aware of how it's being taught. You can also, encourage your kindergarten teacher to do things differently and share what you're discovering and things, depending on, if they're open to that. I know that there seems to be a bigger movement to kind of incorporate a lot of the Montessori principles in more traditional schools. I know, for example, in Belgium recently, there was a whole year where this woman named Céline Alvarez, who wrote a book about Montessori, who is Montessori trained herself, just gave this whole year of how to reevaluate the way we were teaching children. And I know that all of that, she has made that accessible to the general public. All of the recorded videos are there. I'm not sure if all of them are translated. She's a French speaker, and it was done in Belgium and French, but I will share that link in the replay as well, where it's possible, right, to bring Montessori even in the most traditional schools, because it's just an awareness of how our children learn and such. So definitely, look into getting the Montessori toddler, maybe doing even some of there's actually a course that Simone and I did that's on Simone's website called the Montessori Preschooler, where I walk you through kind of how is their mind working and what you can do at home. So Simone, anything to add there?
Yeah, I guess people always say, like, where do I start and those kind of things. And I always say there's like three kind of things we can do as Montessori parents. Is we can look for the activities, which Jeanne-Marie kind of touched on, and you can do practical life things, just involving them in your daily life and making things accessible and helping them with their independence. And then there's setting up your home, which again is to get them involved and make them feel part of the family and that they're contributing. So that's, having low furniture, having things accessible in the kitchen so they can set the table with you, having a place where they can hang up their coats and bags as they enter, having their room so they can get in and out of their bed. So maybe a toddler bed if you haven't transitioned to a low bed yet. And then there's the parenting side of things, which is how we communicate in all of the gentle parenting approach really fits in really nicely with Montessori, which is about freedom within limits. So I think there's probably like those kind of things, that those principles you can do through the child's entire life, no matter if they go to Montessori school or not. So I think Jeanne-Marie and I are both passionate about, even if you can't afford to go to Montessori school, even if there's not one in your area, you can definitely apply any of this at home, as many of the people on the call can definitely attest to, because I know that that's a lot of our situations right now. Okay, so Isabel, you're first up with your hand up, so you get to unmute yourself and ask away.
Hello, thank you. Yes, my son is 12 months old, and we have been doing Montessori from the beginning. And now I recognize that he's cooperating a lot and is doing more and more things independently. And now I wonder, when is the right time to prepare the environment accordingly? Because I would like to support his independence, and at the same time, I do not want to overcharge him. So especially when it comes to his own self-care and washing station, his wardrobe, or his own hook in the cloakroom, do you have any hints what I could look for when he is prepared to go next steps?
So the best tool that you have as a parent is observation. is really taking note of what he's interested in, what he's requesting to do, right? Because 12 months is still quite young. He's probably a new walker, I would assume, and such. So that is the phase that they're in, is that whole gross motor development, and it takes a lot to get up and start being on 2 feet and walking. But this is also the time when we are able to give them more work, because now their hands are free to work. Up until now, they've used their hands for mobility to get around, and now they are eager to put these amazing tools to good use, right? But I would really observe, because it is about where their interests lie. So if they're starting to be super interested with how the fasteners on their coats are working and such, well, there we can start showing them and helping them master that skill, right? Or if they're showing you that they're really wanting to put their shoes on by themselves, well, we might want to have a little stool where they can sit down and take the time to do so, or even have a little basket with a few spare socks where they can just practice putting on socks. Like, that's an activity, because all of those things we tend to want to show them when it's needed, and when our time is very limited and our patience is low because we need to get out the door, and they don't have the time to practice and put that sock on, take it off, put it on, take it off. And they can do this for 45 minutes, but that's how they're going to master that skill. So for me, it's really about you learning to observe and kind of take notes of where his interests are, and then showing him and guiding him to be able to master those skills. The same thing, with preparing snack, for example, definitely start thinking of where you can set things up for him to do independently. But always, to me, it's about observing their need. They're teaching us, they're leading us as to where they want to go. And Simone, I'd love your take on this one.
Well, absolutely. I think around 12 months, like Jeanne-Marie says, they're kind of on the cusp. And so their hands are freeing up, but they're not always successful. So I would just keep offering them opportunities, and then they'll take over more and more steps themselves. So I kind of always call it scaffolding. So it might just be that, like, you give them a chance to hang up their coat by themselves, and, you break it down and you show them. It might be that they're not feeding themselves so much. So, giving them more time, stabbing the food for them, and putting it so they can bring it to their mouth themselves. And then I have some very young ones in my class, and I notice around 12 months, they're not as good at pouring, but if by the end of the 13-week course, they really are. And it just is like by scaffolding. So I start with putting a tiny bit of water in their little jug, and then they're interested and they use their whole arm. They kind of, I kind of move the glass sometimes to catch it, because they are really excited if some of it gets into the glass. So we're kind of collaborating. And I think if you read The Montessori Baby, you'll hear that, like, it was from, they were dependent on us. And then you're in that collaboration stage right now, and then they'll become more independent. So I keep working on, like Jeanne-Marie said, that collaborating, just helping them a little bit, and they can get on with the rest. And there's self-care, even when you're dressing, they can start to put their arm in for themselves. Even if they can't put their whole t-shirt on, you can just say, oh, can you give me your arm? And you just wait that moment for them to lift up their arm and put it in. When Jeanne-Marie touched on language, like language explosion happening right now. So you can definitely do a lot of that as well, which is just fun, because every part of your home, it has language and things involved. I think just being together and like getting them involved, even like unpacking the groceries, for example, that would be perfect, because as you take out one can, they're starting to like, oh, okay, I can put that into the thing, or they could pass you the things. I mean, I had my kids, for example, doing the buttons on the washing machine. So I'd hold them up so they could reach, because I didn't have a front loader. Just anything that they can be a part of their daily life. You'll just notice they'll take over more and more steps, and soon they'll be cooking your dinner.
Okay,
that
great.
helpful?
Thank you.
You're good. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
thanks.
Yes.
Oh, yes. The
Joy.
next one. Oh, yeah. Can I do another one from the Instagram?
Sure.
Okay. What about screen time? How to control and what to do when you can't control it? So we don't have it an age. So it might be nice to we'll do 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 12. What do you think?
I'm a big advocate of no screen before 6 or even 10. I feel like we do control with what we bring into our home. We control what we put in our refrigerator. We control what we put in our children's hands. And it's just, for me, it's really a personal choice. And as a personal story, I chose to get rid of my television during the first 10 years of my children's life. And I'm so glad that I did. My children did not have phones until they were in high school. And that's actually when I got my first phone. So I know that it's very different now. My eldest is 25 and things are definitely more accessible, but I think it's really important that us as the adults, we are the adults in the room, be very conscientious about what we are modeling to our children. And that, it's true that all of the apps and the screens and such that are on our phone, they have been studying our brain for us to stay hooked and be addicted and scroll mindlessly. That is what they aim to do and succeed to do. And so I think if we are aware of that and we can model to our children the proper use of a telephone, what it's meant for. And one of my suggestions with parents is often to just say out loud what you are doing. So when you pick up your phone, you say, oh, I need to send a message to daddy because I forgot to buy some milk. Let me send him a message. Or, oh, I need to FaceTime my friend to make sure she's okay and she's recuperating from COVID. Or I just want to look at some recipes and such, and kind of you get in the habit of limiting your time. So putting a timer or having a sand glass or whatever works for you. And then what I like to also suggest is that our telephone stays in a specific place, so that it's not on us all the time. So we're not being distracted by that buzz or that ding and all this, taking off all notification and putting it maybe in a drawer or in a cupboard. So when it rings, we kind of go back to what a phone, right, was before. We would go and we would have to stand by the phone and talk. So just picking it up, saying hello, whatever, and putting it back so that we can model a better hygiene around screen time. So for me, that's kind of my take in, how do we limit it? Well, we don't introduce it. But that being said, that is much easier said than done. So for me, it's really, first of all, do not ever introduce a screen to a child if they're not interested. Again, it's following their lead. And I know that children really are not interested in screens unless we show them and we put it in front of them, because it is those flashing little lights that get their brain fixed on it. So again, if we're following their lead, they're not specifically interested. They are interested in what we're playing with, what we have in our hands all the time. That's why I say, let's model that. And then, limiting it is, you have to decide within your family, what are those values? If you need or want to have your child interacting with a screen for, 10, 15 minutes a day, that is fine. Just make sure that you stay consistent as to, beginning and end, and that it really is a limited time. What is kind of harmful is children just being left in front of screen unintended with no interaction. We know that that is not, beneficial to their language development and so forth. So just being modeling. I went on a little bit too long with that, but it is something that I feel passionate about and very strong. Simone, what do you have with that?
Well, yeah, I definitely think that less is definitely going to be more in this case. And for 0 to 3, they don't need it. So people say, but what about Montessori apps and things? It's like, I would rather them touch a sandpaper letter with their hands than trace this shape. They're not getting that feedback like they would. So they really don't need it. People are worried that the kid's going to fall behind if they've not been introduced to technology. And yet technology, if a 2-year-old can swipe and open something, it's not like they missing out, that kind of thing. Then 3 to 6, again, there's not much need for it, and they might see it at a friend's house and things like that, so you have to decide how you're going to manage that. And I just decided, like when my kids were small, okay, well, what happens outside the house, I can speak with the parents a little bit about what they might see, but I can't really stop it happening. But because they're not always, I have to trust that they're with me most of the time, with our family most of the time, and they're absorbing our values. So then as they got older, I did have half an hour of screen time a day. And so say 6 to 12-year-olds. And what I liked about that was that they then chose what kind of screen they'd like to use. So this would be like, they could choose, oh gosh, I think it was a Wii at the time. They don't even have those anymore, do they? But like they always chose really active things. There was a game called Roller Coaster Tycoon and Zoo Tycoon, when I had to design a zoo and work out what habitat they lived in, all these kind of things. So so there's a beautiful book called by Sue Palmer, which is old now, and it was actually before there were iPads, but the same principles apply. Is like, really be mindful of what they're consuming. So like Jeanne-Marie says, like, you don't leave them unattended, but also like, what shows are you going to allow them to be exposed to? What programs, like Minecraft, for example, could be actually a good choice. And then they know a little bit about what is going on with their friend group, but it's very much limited. And then people say, what about Skyping family and all that kind of thing? And I think that that's just our way of talking on the telephone. So that doesn't count as screen time for me, unless they were abusing that for some reason. But I really find that falls in. The last thing is, maybe we could keep talking about this maybe we could do that one day. But for the 6 to 12-year-olds, I got really nice advice when I did my Montessori assistance training from Alison Oars. And she talked about having like a family Instagram account for your pet or something like that, because then the children will start to know the risks of social media, how people like follow you, who you follow back, and that kind of thing. So you're actually practicing together before they want and they sneak behind your back to open an account. You've actually just been very honest, and you're basically educating them with the tool. How it's like, you're not going to give a child a knife, and we're basically not giving them a screen without some education as well. Okay, hopefully that more than answers that one. So let's, Naomi also said that they've been, her partner and her have started the narration idea, and it's been very helpful for personal accountability. So on that, Naomi, over to you for your question.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to you both for doing this. This is really lovely. So I have a 2-year, he'll be 2 years old next month, and he is currently in a Spanish immersion Montessori school, which feels like such a gift. I am curious, he is very, very into reading right now, us reading to him, so much so that is what he primarily chooses to do. So we have open shelves, he'll have some activities. We don't have a lot of toys in the house, but he loves to read. And I'm curious if it's too much of an expectation now at this age for him to be doing more independent play at home, and how we could encourage his love of reading, but to do it a little bit more independently. So I think he loves music and he loves to read, but very few other things catch his attention in the home. And I just need some coaching on how to honor that, but help him be a little bit more independent.
Well, he's a literary person, right? He's a man of words, and that is following him. I just like any activity really, and this comes up a lot with parents, is when the child is focused into something, they tend to want to see if we can, offer something else or get them out of the focus. And I know I learned this in the primary classroom, where I remember I had this young boy who was just fascinated with numbers. And that's all he wanted to do all day long, just write these long strips of numbers and count them. And I went to my mentor and said, but he's not doing language and all of this. And they told me, let him be. Like, this is an inner need to master this skill that they have discovered. So with your child, it sounds to me, though, that you're also asking for help to maybe not be the one always reading the books, right? To always have to be there. So there, I think it's really in your words and in your boundaries, and just saying, mommy would love to read a book for you right now, and I have something that I need to do. Would you like to come help me? And so here it's really about engaging him in what you are doing in the home, in the chores, in the practical life, in really getting him to be with you when you are preparing food, when you are cleaning, when you are doing laundry, and such. So that would be something where I would really try to strive into having a rhythm where you're including him more in the practical life, right? So that he can maybe even start, preparing a snack and doing things that he is probably doing in his toddler environment if he is in a Montessori school. So those are things that you could kind of replicate at home. And that, I think, would be, interesting. I would also, see what are the activities that he is doing in his classroom. What is he focused on and interested in? How can you maybe not replicate, but offer something similar at home that he would be excited to do? And then for me, at 2, it's also not too early to start doing kind of sound games and starting to have this awareness of the sounds of the letters and everything. I mean, I had some children who walked into my classroom, I think even before 2.5, and they were already, they were ready for those sandpaper letters. They already had that desire, which sounds like what your son has. So playing, games that are about language while you're doing things of, oh, I spy something that starts with a, what do you see? And just, have fun in your homes. So you're not, having to sit with him and read. And then I would also encourage to just say, mommy needs to go read something else. Why don't you read your book? And I'm going to be reading my book. So again, that independence of just, looking at the book and telling the story to himself. So that's where I would start. And Simone, what suggestions do you have?
So many good ideas from Jeanne-Marie, that the only thing I would just say as well is, like, which books are taking his attention the most? Is it because it's animals? Is it because it's vehicles or whatever? And then follow his interest that way. Whichever one's the most engaging, it can give you a lot of information, because you can, if it's vehicles, which a lot of 2-year-olds are interested in, regardless of gender, then you can have books about vehicles. You can have vehicles. You can make craft about vehicles. You can, do lots of things with making a washi tape road and other things that he might be able to play independently as well. So let's, I think, Akshata, we're up to you.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this show. It's so helpful. So mine is a bit of too much to ask probably, but I'll still go ahead and you can decide whether it's appropriate for this show. So, like, as a Montessorians, we always aim for a peaceful world. And recently in India, actually, one of the guru has started this campaign for saving soil, because he says that soil is being extinct, and he's estimating that by 2050, the world population will increase by like 9 billion, but the soil, it's degrading and decreasing, and only 40%, we can get only 40% of the produce what we're getting now, which means will be so much of shortage of food. and which might lead to so many civil wars or even, wars between the nations, which is completely what we don't want. So my question would be like, as a Montessorians and as a, peace educators, what can we do about this, and how can we spread the awareness in the community? Is it too much to ask, or should we?
Not at all. No, not at all. I mean, I think that is the essence of, being peace educators. I think Dr. Montessori would be very proud of you bringing, up this topic. It is a heavy topic. It's sometimes, and I saw the video you shared, and I went ahead and shared it with a friend who, educates parents exactly about that, about food and soil and gardening and all of that. So just by you making others aware, that is something that you can do, right? Just you being aware of this issue and learning what it is that we can do to make sure that we don't go down that route, right? Because what this person is saying is this is what could happen. It doesn't necessarily have to happen. And I think that is, by us educating ourselves, by being aware, by starting a garden, by making sure we eat local, by, all of these things, I think that, we have power by how we spend our money, of how the choices that we make in our day-to-day life. So that would be one. But I know that, Simone, I would love for your take on this, because I know you did a lot of work with Montessori Everywhere and the environment. Like what is kind of that aspect of how can we help our children and empower our children to be aware of these issues and start reversing the issues?
So actually, Akshita, I'm going to pop in the chat. I just popped it in, another link to the lead Montessori conversation about what's happening in the world right now, because it was a conversation about peace education in the context of war, but it's also did touch on, particularly the 6 to 12 trainer touched on kind of environment and how we can talk to children about it. And like basically the thing I took away from this, it was lovely to hear it again just today, was like 0 to 3, we don't really need to put fear into our children. They need positive examples, right? So you need somewhere safe to process that outside of talking to your child about it, because it's not really affecting them right now. You can show them already, and I know you do, how you care for the land and how you care for the environment, and that's all the good stuff that you do with 0 to 3. Then 3 to 6, they might see you watching that video, and they might see you talking about it with a friend, and then they might have questions about it, and then that's when you're very honest, very matter of fact, and you talk about what this soil problem might be. And then you can also, what they often see is the fear, and they often might see the same things being shown again and again, and they're not able to understand that that's actually not the same thing happening and devastating everywhere, but that it's this clip, because the 3 to 6-year-old needs some help to understand what's happening, and that it's not right now, but it's in the future. They're really complicated kind of things for a 3 to 6-year-old. But also what they often don't see is what's being done about it. So then you can not only what Jeanne-Marie was saying about what we can do locally, but we can also say, like, these are the government officials and what they're talking to these people, and we can write a petition, and we can do this, and like all the different ways you can take action. And then the 6 to 12-year-olds are in about justice. And they were really careful to say, like, good versus evil is an idea that a 6 to 12-year-old has in their head, but actually that's then blaming someone. And instead you want them to kind of look instead at, like, how are we going to solve the problem? And like Montessori kids are great at solving problems. So they might actually come up with brilliant ways for soil, how we're going to create more food, and, planting vertically, and, other things that won't affect soil quality. So it becomes a different conversation. So I definitely recommend the hour to listen to the community conversation. One thing that was really beautiful was it's kind of like you can respond to war or eco disasters and all these kind of things with fear, or you can respond with community. And so I thought that was also very Montessori to say, yes, this is an honest threat, and we're going to respond with community. Let's build our community. Let's join hands with my international friends or my local friends or wherever you can. Yeah.
Wonderful. And you know, again, Ashkata, I mean, I watched you, you know, how you raise your daughter, like you are making her aware of so much without, you know, putting in the fear and such. And that I think is what's most important, you know, all those walks out in nature. That's how our children learn to care and be stewards of the environment, is because they're exposed to it, because their love for it is already there and it's genuine. And if we nourish that, then they, you know, they are there. So one thing that I will say is be careful also, like, you know, Simone was saying, is to not go down that rabbit hole of fear. It's like, it's more of like, okay, I'm learning about this, I wonder what I can do. And to really always turn it back to the positive of what it is that I can do on a daily basis.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really reassuring, because yeah, it did create a lot of fear, because we want a peaceful world and we thought we are going there, and then we see this such a huge problem coming on our way. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
And the more Montessori families, the better we will be too.
So we've got Marika on the call who sent in a question earlier. So Marika, would you like to unmute yourself if your baby allows?
Yeah, sure. So far she's asleep. So let's see how it goes. Yeah, so my question is basically about decluttering and letting things go. So I have an older daughter as well. She just turned 3 2 months ago. And I started the process of decluttering like a few months ago. I thought I lead by example, right? And I talked a lot about it, like, oh, we don't need this. Maybe someone else can make use of it. So we can gift it, we can donate. And yeah, so I did all of this and it feels amazing. I can just recommend it. So I would love her to be part of this now as well, especially since she made this transition from a toddler to a preschooler. I feel like she grew out of a few things, and also with the baby, it would be beneficial to have some more space. And yeah, and we reached a point where she really tried to keep everything, like including even toilet paper rolls that we painted while we were in quarantine, or like little glittery pieces of garbage basically that she finds on the street, right? But it's shiny, so she can keep it. I always allow her to take something home if she wants to. She can put it in the pockets of her jacket. But now all the stuff is accumulating. So I try to balance between, yeah, I respect what, if you want to keep this, you can keep it, but there's also the limit of space, and I don't want to feel swallowed by all the pieces and bits and stuff. So yeah, I was wondering how I could kind of encourage her more to let go, and yeah, what you would recommend.
So this is it's funny because you know, some children go through this phase of just being collectors. They have to collect everything, and it's you know, it's little rocks, it's little sticks, it's little, you know, glitter, all of that. So I think we need to respect that you know, part of their development. I think by you modeling, you know, what it takes to declutter and have this clear space, I think now is just setting boundaries as to what you want the environment to look and feel like, and also like bringing it into her awareness of how things feel once we've kind of cleaned out the room or the closet and such. So kind of letting her be aware of those sensations as well. But, you know, if she is in a phase where she wants to collect all these things, we have to respect that. So there, for me, it's, and there is a book, and I'm trying to, Becker is his last name, but I think it's Clutter Free with Kids, or Clutter Free Kids. And he, you know, he mentions how same situation, he's discovered minimalism. He wants, you know, very minimal things, but he has one of his child who just loves to collect things. So what he had, you know, envisioned is that they have a specific space to be able to keep those things. So maybe it's a, large box or a drawer or, one of the cubbies. And once it doesn't fit in, well, we have to reevaluate what it is we want to keep, right? So that is going to help her also kind of go through that process. Once it doesn't fit, there's no room in that drawer. Well, we need to make room. And it's this whole, it's the whole principle also of feng shui, right? When we bring something in, we have to let go of something. So there's always this exchange of energy. And so it's really about helping her understand that in a concrete way. So that would be my suggestion. Simone, do you have, and I think we also did a show on decluttering. And Askasha reminds me of Nicole Kavanaugh's daughter collecting dead bugs. Exactly. That is so funny. That's right.
I with everything Jeanne-Marie said. I popped a link to that book in the chat as well. And I just found that I had a shoebox, and so things like the party gifts that they could bring home, these bouncy balls and all that kind of stuff. It just went into this little shoebox. And then here in the Netherlands, it wasn't really until the kids were around 7 years old that they wanted to really let go of things, because they could sell them we have a King's Day or a Queen's Day where they could put things out and sell them. And then they started realizing that they could sell them for money. So at 3 years old, it is hard for them to let go of things. But what you could also do is just put them into a box to put them away, out of sight for a little bit, as opposed to we're throwing this away, we have to give it away right now, and all those kind of things. But you can pop it into a box, and usually out of sight, out of mind. And then, like you say, Jeanne-Marie, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit in there. So it's definitely interesting. And also when they get to 6 to 12, they will become collectors, but usually it's of a thing that they're interested in, around an interest, and that's less invasive, I think, for me than that stuff.
Right. And one more thing about, the decluttering process sometimes, and this might help her, is using this kind of 3-box technique, right? Where when you have something, you either want to get rid of it, you're either unsure, or you really want to keep it. And those are the kind of the three decisions. And the unsure, you put it in that box, but then you close the box and you put it away. And before you open that box of unsure, you have to remember what's in it. And that is often very telling as to whether it was really worth saving or not, because most people forget what they were unsure that they really wanted to save. So might be a good trick too. So yeah.
I think for that's a bit hard.
Wait.
I think for a 3-year-old, that's expected.
That might be hard for a 3-year-old, but it's something that we can model when we're doing it as well, right? It's about just that idea of, the keeping it just for keeping it, or do we really want it? And I wonder, like the whole Marie Kondo, if she works with children about that idea of, that things spark joy. I think that is such a beautiful approach to how we, what we keep in our home. Does it really spark joy? I would think that children could have that sensation. It'd be interesting to know.
I think also just when we live these values, they pick it up. They've got this absorbent mind, right? So don't be pressured right now that they have to give up that thing, but just they see you purging and getting rid of things. Marie Kondo does talk about, focus on yourself first, and other members of your family will follow. And it took years for other members of my family to follow. But they know what it feels like to live in a clutter-free place, and it kind of also becomes like that as well. Now, Jeanne-Marie and I are having so much fun that we just in the chat to each other said, can we just stay on for a bit longer? Because there's some that have come in we haven't got to. So if you've got time, please do stay along and chat with us. And if you have to go, we will be sending the recording with all the links as well. But there's one question that came in via the email, and it was from Carolina. who asked, my son of 1 and 8 months doesn't let us brush his teeth. He loves eating the toothpaste, but then closes his mouth and shouts if we try to brush his teeth correctly. We brush our teeth with him to give him examples, but it doesn't work. I would appreciate any tips on how to teach him to brush his teeth in a respectful manner. Thanks. And I thought this one we can put to the people in the call as well. So drop down how you get your child to brush their teeth. And Jeanne-Marie.
And Simone, can you repeat the age of the child?
1 year, 8 months.
Okay. So, okay. So 20 months old. Teeth brushing seems to be a struggle with so many parents. Oh, and I'm so sorry. To me, again, it's it's going to be about modeling. It's about just letting go of this, like they have to brush their teeth a certain way. I guess I tend to err on, wanting to make it fun, taking turns, having, a song maybe you can have, maybe even, I don't know of any specific one, but I'm sure there's some good children's books about, brushing teeth. Maybe sometimes also trying kind of the finger one that we used to use just for the gums, for the new ones, like giving them different tools, explaining that, but at 20 months, like the explaining, they're still, the unconscious learner, they really could care less of what you're explaining about why it's important. But it's really about, making it intriguing and maybe taking turns. They brush your teeth, you brush their teeth. But I think it's just also taking the pressure off yourself that it has to be done a specific way every single day, right? This is something that they will learn, that they will master on their own. 20 months is still young. All of those baby teeth are going to come out. They will have a new set of teeth in a few years that they will know how to care for. So that's kind of my take on just taking some pressure off of you. But Simone, do you have things?
Yeah. I agree with all those things. I mean, basically, we're always trying to do things working with the child as opposed to them feel like we're doing it to them. So the thing is that, yeah, like you say, they're quite young still. So it's really not about getting their teeth perfectly clean. So I would say you start and then, then I'll finish. And my children even went through a stage where they just chomped on it in the bathtub for a while and then I would finish. So then it just took the pressure off for that bit of resistance and then it kind of went back to normal. And I really like how Marika uses the routine cards that says we need to brush the teeth. Not mum, so then she doesn't have to keep nagging. So it might be young, but at the same time it's a visual cue, like, oh, we've been in the bath, now it's time. What does this say? Oh, look, it's a toothbrush. It's just like your toothbrush. And they can start to see that a 3D object is the same as a 2D. Akshatha says, I give her enough time before brushing, and she needs a cup full to cooperate with brushing, and it's working great so far. So that's true. Sometimes we wake up and we're going to bed and we've got all this agenda, but actually if we give them the time and we fill their cup. Janini says, keeping 2 of each, 2 brushes, 2 cups to wash your mouth and letting them choose between the 2 helped us. Giving them a choice can be wonderful for children as well.
Beautiful.
So
yeah.
I love that. I've got more questions. Should we keep going?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. There was a really good one about water. Where's it gone? Oh no. Okay, I'll come back to it. But there's my 2-year-old, okay, only wants to play with vehicles and ignores other toys and activities. Should I just follow interest or encourage other items? How should I encourage if that's what is recommended? And I'm also struggling with toy throwing, and to redirect to softballs into the basket isn't working. Thank you so much.
So there it kind of goes back to, the question about a child wanting to read all the time. Vehicles are fascinating. They're fascinating. They're long objects. They make noise. They can do all sorts of things. I would definitely follow his lead and follow that curiosity. So there you can do, books on different vehicles. You can go look at a construction site and name all the parts of the vehicle, know what the different types of vehicles are. and he will become a expert on vehicles. And once that need is satisfied, he will move on to something else and will want to discover something else. So there, to me, it's really about following that lead. And there's plenty of activities that you can do, with vehicles, like creating a little road in your house, having matching cards to go along with them and such. And then the other activities, for me, I always go back to practical life, to just involving them with what needs to be done in the house, right? What they have been watching and observing us do since the time they were born, that they are excited to be able to do what the adult has been doing. So inviting them into what you're doing, like, I really need your, oh my goodness, there's some cucumbers that need peeling, come, I need your help, and showing them, giving them those kind of guidance and lessons to be able to do that. And then there was a second part to the question that I forget, Simone.
Yeah, so before we do that, I guess also, like, there's so many, I do have puzzles, and every time, often I have out one with vehicles, and then they're interested to do the vehicle puzzle. And I also have threading at the moment, which is little trains. And so it's actually quite a hard threading activity, which is really good for their coordination. So you could just look for things with vehicles, and that often will take their interest that way as well. And then they're struggling also with toy throwing, and redirecting to softballs into the basket isn't working.
So there, it's really getting all of that throwing. Throwing is an important skill to have, right? It's something that it needs to be mastered. So I would do a lot of throwing outside, when you're outside with balls and practicing and such, so that we can say, throwing, we throw outside, or that is something hard, we throw only soft. And at some point, if it doesn't stop, I think we need to remove those things that are dangerous, just temporarily, until they really understand that there is, you have to set the boundaries, and it is through the environment that we set the boundaries. So if they are, that the vehicles, we roll them on the floor, and they're maybe creating a road, so they can do that. But, vehicles, hard things are not for throwing. They stay on the floor in the basket. We can throw the softballs, or we can go outside and throw more things. But that awareness of what can be thrown and what cannot. Simone, what about throwing for you?
And observe, why are they throwing? So is it because it's too hard, too easy, not interesting to them? So that would definitely be something that I would add to that as well. And throwing can also be like needing maximum effort, needing to move, like get all of their body like working a lot. So looking at ways that they can work their muscles again, practical life skills and things like that would be great. And lifting heavy objects, and that might help instead. You could also even make a target on your wall, which might be more interesting than just getting the softballs into a basket. They might find it really fun to throw at a target on the wall that you could remove later. So I found the one about water. Okay, it's a long question, but I'm going to read the whole thing because it kind of, I think it will resonate for a lot of people. They've thanked us for our work, which is very kind. My question is about my 1 year, 7-month-old. I'm trying to give him as much independence as I can, but I don't feel comfortable giving him independence with water. We use a bidet for washing his hands and drinking, but if we leave the bathroom open and available, he keeps on playing with the water and he gets totally wet every time. And if we leave him a glass of water available, he ends up throwing the water and the glass. Is it possible that he's not ready? I've heard many times that water should be available for children as soon as possible, and I feel guilty when I lock the bathroom so he can't access the bidet. But otherwise, I have to change all his clothes because he gets wet. Do you have any advice on this? Thanks in advance.
Well, there is, great observation on your part. He's fascinated with water, and water is such an amazing element that, it is sensorial. It feels good. I mean, we love to take bath and go swimming and everything. So it is a need that they have, the favorite activities oftentimes with young children revolves around water and food. So I would plan maybe so that you can maybe let him experience water and maybe more, in the bathtub or in the bidet. And there maybe, make sure that he is not fully clothed when you are presenting those activities. And one of the activities that I was going to suggest is it's done, it's done in the primary, so later, but I think it would be fine, is just, transferring water from one bowl to the other with a sponge. Just that, that there you get really that beautiful sensorial experience of the absorption and the water, and you're transferring. And yes, it does get messy, but just be prepared for that and show how to clean it up. This is beautiful. Next lesson will be how to use the cloth to wipe up the water that is on the floor, or maybe how to use a mop and things like that, because everything is going to be a successions of activity, right? I remember in the classroom when we did the pouring the beans, we have 2 pitchers with, maybe some lentils, and we transfer. There was always a spill. So there was always beans all over the floor. Beautiful activity is how to broom and how to use the dustpan to collect them, right? So be prepared to show what the next step is so that we can play with water, and then we know how to clean it up, right? So that we are satisfying his need to experience with water. And maybe also have activities of having a little watering can to water the plants, so that we also have a respect for water, and that water has a function, right? We give water to the plants, or if you have a pet, making sure that the water bowl is full for the cat or the dog, things like that, like following that interest into how to use water properly. Simone?
I love all of those ideas because, like, as you say, there is an interest in water. And I think the biggest thing for me is being okay with setting a limit as well. It's like, it's okay to shut that door. That
Exactly.
is,
Yeah.
and if we can be calm and clear guides, then that's the most, like, that is important, because if you go beyond your limit, then you're going to end up snapping. We're going, oh, you've got all wet again. And, we can't be patient. We can't be infinitely patient. Montessori parent doesn't mean you have to let your child do whatever they want. It's not that. It's actually like saying, it's too much water for me. So there was one day, and the parents laugh. They still say, I reached Simone's limit. I'm like, you did. I put a bucket on top of the tap and said, there's no more water. We have no more towels left to clean up today. The tap is closed. And they thought it was hilarious. And I wasn't even shouting. I just very kindly said, the water's all done. So yeah. There's one last question. Shall we do it?
Okay, let's do one more. Yes.
Okay. Oh, actually, someone wrote in the chat. Naomi said, this is wonderful. Thank you so much, Jeanne-Marie. I need to leave. Okay, the plan to watch the rest. Blessings to all. You're welcome, Johnny. This question reminds me of when my daughter was obsessed with water and now would refuse to get out of the bath. And now at 3, she refuses to take a bath or even wash her hands properly from time to time. Such different phases of development.
Yes. Very funny. Yes.
Okay, let's make this the last one from Jillian. What is the best way to introduce little parts toys that are open-ended but also pose a choking hazard? My 26-month-old rarely puts anything in their mouth anymore, but I don't feel comfortable leaving little parts on the shelf. Also, have a little one being born in June. Should I keep those pieces out of reach and then only place as an invitation to play when I can supervise?
I would say yes. You've answered your own question. If there is a safety hazard and you are not comfortable, then those are things that we do together, sitting together and playing together to make sure that they are, there are not a choking hazard. And the fact that you are going to be welcoming a new one in your home, you definitely don't want those parts, anywhere near. So I think that is, preventive anyway. I know, for when we are welcoming little ones, we need to help our older child be aware of those safety hazards also. So I think it's just, an opportunity to say these are activities that we can do together when, you know, baby is sleeping or, you know, playing independently. And I'm sure that they have plenty of other toys that are accessible. So I would not worry about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, having containers that they can't open is actually to our advantage too, because then they could come over and say they want to play with this, but that then they need supervision. So that could be a way of still giving them freedom of choice, but keeping it safe for everyone. And then as they become more able to manage the small parts, but the baby's not, then you can have them out of reach of the baby in containers that the child can open as they kind of get older as well. And I think it comes just back again to limit setting, because you might see it on Instagram that there's paint out or that there's small parts out and those kind of things. But in my classroom, for example, I have scissors available for all the time, even with 14 months old in my class. But if I was at home, I would not have scissors out with a 14-month-old. So it's like, it's what you see on Instagram and what is in reality. It's like actually safety is first. So please always, everyone, keep that in mind. And yeah, that's it for today's call. Jeanne-Marie, that was really fun. Is there anything you wanted to share with us before we head off?
No, I think it's just, you know, I think all of you parents and educators and such, it's, you know, we have the tool of observation that is very important, and the immense tool of intuition and just knowing in our hearts what we can and cannot handle. So just like the water thing and the small parts things, like listen to what's going on for you, right? If you don't feel safe, then you've got to listen to that. You cannot push it. So that being said, and I apologize if you did not receive the emails. I'm not quite sure what went on. It was programmed to go out, but I will double check on that. I will be sending out the replay to all of our subscribers. We will also put the link in the YouTube description for you to join us for future shows if you would like to. And we did not set a date, Simone, for our next show, but we'll figure that one out and maybe put it in the email. And just
one. Wow, we'll be like,
wait,
it'll be a pre-summer one.
Exactly. Yes. And then Simone mentioned that we have, as Montessorian, we have collectively created a bundle that is available until next Tuesday, where 100% of the proceeds are going to supporting families in Ukraine that are needing to flee their homes. And so that will be sent in the replay as well. And we encourage you to get those if you're interested. It's like 100 and some printables and all sorts of wonderful resources for families. So, and I think that's it for me.
I thought you were about to say it's $100. It's not $100. It's
no, it's $19. No, it's nothing. I say, well, it's a bundle of more than 100 items. So well worth it. And there's the opportunity to donate more and such. So if you have friends that you want to, you know, buy it for or just share it, that would be wonderful.
Well, it was a good thing I lost all those questions via stories, because I for all of them today. Thank you everyone for being there. My apologies if I did lose your question and you joined the replay. But thank you everyone for being with us today. It's so lovely to be in community with you all. That is what is going to get us together. Thank you for all your lovely notes in the chat as well.
All righty. Thank you, everybody. Take good care.